Hey all, we are going to go over equations today. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, so if you ever get confused or lost, feel free to stop the recording, play it back, rewind, all that good stuff. I'm going to go over the warm-up really quick right here. First, we have this c minus 22 equals 54. Well, of course, you just add 22 to both sides there. That's going to give you c is equal to 76. You have to have that c is equal when we're solving our equations. We have to make sure we are having this equal sign and we have this variable. Here we're going to work away from our variable, closer to our variable is the best way to put it. So we're going to work backwards. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides here to get an 11x is equal to a 33. And then I divide by 11 on both sides, and we get an x is equal to a 3. This next one, make sure you remember how to distribute. It's very important that we know how to distribute to both of our terms here. So we're going to distribute that negative to that y and that negative to that negative 2. I know it says minus 2 there, but that minus 2 is the same thing as saying a negative 2. Remember, this negative out front is really just a negative 1. So we're multiplying everything there by a negative 1. So basically, you're going to change the signs of everything in your parentheses there. So we're going to have a negative y, and then that's going to be plus 2 is equal to a negative 11. So now we have our negative y plus 2 equals negative 11. I'm going to have to subtract 2 on both sides to get my variable by itself. And that gives me a negative 13. Now here's where a lot of students stop, and that's where a lot of students mess up, because it's not, we don't care what negative y is equal to. To get rid of that negative in front of your y, we have to multiply or divide everything by a negative. So basically, you're just going to multiply this by negative 1, that makes it positive. You're going to multiply this by negative 1, which makes it positive because it was negative. And you guys know that a negative times a negative is a positive. This last one, this is the one that tricks everybody up. They don't know what to do with this dividing by negative 3, because that's all that means. This is a fraction, but it's just dividing by negative 3. And we have a minus 7 there. So to get rid of minus 7, that's the first thing we should do. So we're going to add 7 on both sides. So adding 7 on both sides, I get an m divided by negative 3 still on this left side. And that's going to give me a negative 5 on my right side when I do negative 13 plus a 7. It doesn't really matter if this negative's on the m out front or on that 3. Just know that this whole thing is negative. So we're going to have to multiply it by a negative to get rid of it, because the opposite of dividing by negative 3 is multiplying by negative 3. So I multiply both sides here by negative 3. And then these cancel out. And I get m is equal to negative times a negative is a positive 15. There's the warm-up for you. So now that we finished the warm-up, we're going to go ahead and dive on into some, not new things, you already learned these things, but we're going to review some more equations. The first equation we're going to solve here is a two-step equation. Now, to solve any equation, we can follow our steps of don't call me after midnight. Hopefully you remember what all those stand for. If you don't, I'm going to go over it right now. We distribute. If we have to distribute, we combine like terms. We move our variable, then we add or subtract, then you multiply or divide. If you follow these steps, then you will solve any equation. Any equation that they give you, you'll be able to solve. So on this two-step equation, all we have to do, no distribution, no combining like terms, no moving the variable, so I need to add or subtract. So I'm going to subtract that 10 on both sides. We're doing this to get that 6x closer to being all by itself. And now I have 6x is equal to a 60. Now I just divide both sides by a 6. And I get x is equal to 10. Make sure not to forget your variable in your answer. The second problem, we have some distribution to do. But there are multiple ways to actually do this type of problem. The first way is to distribute that 1/3 to both of the terms that are inside our parentheses there. That 1/3 is really just going to mean we're dividing by 3, because when you're multiplying by a fraction, you're really just multiplying by whatever's on the top and dividing by what's on the bottom. So a 6 divided by 3 is going to give us a 2, so 6 times 1/3 is 2x, because that x drops down. 1/3 times 12, well, it's really just saying 12 divided by 3, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. And that's equal to a 16 here. So now I just have a two-step equation. We need to add or subtract, so I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides and get a 2x is equal to a 12. And now to get our variable all by itself, we have to get rid of that 2. How do we get rid of that 2? We divide. So we're going to divide on both sides by 2 to get x is equal to 6. Now there's another way to solve this problem, and I'm going to go through that briefly now. So we have that 1/3 out front, and if you want to get rid of that 1/3 out front, another way you could solve this problem is to multiply by the reciprocal. Whenever you're multiplying by a fraction, you can multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. That will cancel this out. You'll get 6x plus 12 is equal to 16 times 3, which is a 48. And then you can solve the problem that way too, because this is still just a two-step equation. You subtract 12 on both sides, and you get 6x is equal to 36. And divide by 6 on both sides, and you get x equals 6. So either way is fine. I highly recommend doing it the first way, because that follows these steps and that's what you're more comfortable with. But if you get numbers or decimals or fractions that are scary when you multiply them in the parentheses, you can always use this method to get rid of that fraction out front. Let's look at our next problem. In this problem we have some division and some subtraction, but no distribution, and our variables are still on one side. So you still work outside in. So this is like the one we did on the warm-up. And here you're going to add 2 to both sides to just get that x divided by 3 all by itself. And then how do you undo a divide by 3? You multiply by 3. So we have to multiply both sides by 3. And we get x equals 39. Let's look at our next problem. Now this problem has two ways to go about solving it. Now we have a variable on both sides. Now the first way we could go about solving this is trying to find the lowest common multiple of 3 and 2 and multiplying both sides by that. However, I do want to mention, if you ever just have two fractions that are equal to each other, like this is a fraction equal to this is a fraction, not like this where we have the -2, that's not going to work. But if they're both equal, then there's a proportion there. And you know how to solve proportions. You did it in 7th grade. You cross multiply. Now the trick here is this is x times 3, which is just 3x, is equal to, but this 2 is being multiplied by this whole thing. So it's not just 2 times 2 or 2 times x, it's actually 2x plus 2 times that 2. So you're going to have to distribute that 2 to both terms. So what's 2 times x? 2x. What's 2 times 2? It's 4. I distributed that right to left, but it's still fine. So now we have to we have no distribution. We have no combining like terms, but we need to move all our variables to the same side now. So I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides, and I get x is equal to 4. And you're done. Easy peasy. We're almost done. Hang in there. So this is the last problem I'm going to show you because it kind of combines all of our steps. This is like the trickiest problem I could give you. The only way I could make this more difficult is adding more combining like terms, which you already know because you did yesterday's homework. So first step is to distribute. To distribute, I'm going to distribute both terms, both of these terms across the parentheses. 4 times x is a 4x. 4 times a -2 is a -8. -2 times x is a -2x. -2 times -4. Negative times a negative is a positive. So that's a +8. So now I draw my line down. It's a little crooked, but that's okay. My next step is to combine any like terms. I can't combine 4x and -8, and I can't combine -2x or +8. So I'm going to skip that step. So now we're moving our variables. Now this is, if you are stuck on what to do, you're probably on this step, moving the variables. So we need to move all our variables to the same side. So I could either subtract 4x and move it over here, or add 2x and move it over here. When I say move the variable, I mean we need to get them all to the same side. So I need to get rid of them on one side. I'm scared of negatives, so I'm going to go ahead and add 2x. And if I add 2x there, I have to add it over here. That gets rid of the x's over on our right side. So now all of our variables are on the left side. 4x plus 2x is 6x minus an 8. Now we are on a two-step equation. We need to add or subtract, so I add 8 on both sides. I get a 6x is equal to a 16. Now I multiply or divide to get x by itself, so I divide by 6 on both sides. And I get x is equal to a 16 over 6, which I can simplify. You can divide both 16 and 6 by 2. So divide the numerator and denominator by 2. And my final answer will be x is equal to 8 over 3. It's okay to have a fraction as an answer. It's going to happen. Don't be scared when it does. The last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is our one solution, infinite solution. At the high school they call it infinitely many solutions, and no solution. I just want to make sure you understand this. One solution is going to happen most of the time. It's when you solve a problem and you're going to get a variable is equal to something. So like that, and you get x equals 4. There you go. Infinite solutions is when you have the same thing on both sides. So if I have something like this, and if I solve this, I move my variables, so I subtract 2x on both sides, I get 2 is equal to 2. Your variables are going to cancel out in this situation, and you'll get something that is true. That's infinitely many solutions, or infinite solutions. No solution is if you have your variables cancel out and you get something that is not true. So in this case, if I subtract 2x on both sides, they cancel out on both sides, and I'm left with negative 3 is equal to 4. Well, is negative 3 the same thing as 4? No. So that's going to be no solution, and that's the symbol for no solution. Hope this helps. Use that to help you on the homework or the activity as you go through the activity, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.